Hillary Clinton, and her campaign of 2008 started the birther controversy. I finished it. You know what I mean. President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period.
For 5 years, he has led the birther movement to delegitimize our first black president. His campaign was founded on this outrageous lie. There is no erasing it in history.
All right, let's talk about it with our panel today, the political happenings of the day. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Leslie Marshall, syndicated talk show host. Mercedes Schlapp, columnist for the Washington Times. And syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. All right. Steve, did you think we were done discussing this? President Obama's not running for another term, and yet it's back.
You know, it's a good thing the country doesn't have any pressing problems to deal with, because we can spend our time on things like this rather than entitlements and wars. Look, I mean, to me, this sort of sad, disappointing day kind of encapsulates the entire campaign in a way, and captures, I think, the things that bother, or the things that make each of these candidates unique. I mean, Hillary Clinton and her team, without question, helped push in the 2008 campaign this notion that Barack Obama was an other, was foreign. There's the Mark Penn memo. We have this reporter, or this Washington bureau chief.
Yeah, let me just throw that up real quick, because this is a Twitter from James Asher, who used to be the Washington bureau chief, I think, from McClatchy. And he, in this tweet, says, hashtag CNN says hashtag Hillary team in 2008 never raised the birther issue. Sid Blumenthal, which we've learned a lot more about given the email scandal, longtime HRC buddy, told me in person Obama born in Kenya. So, Steve, just part of the reporting today.
So there's no question that the Hillary team played a role in pushing this sense that Barack Obama was somehow other. However, Donald Trump, it's ridiculous for him to pretend like he wasn't the main driving force of this. He did this for years. He did it for years after President Obama presented his birth certificate in 2011. He was doing it as recently as last year, and interviews earlier this year. But what makes this sort of interesting as like case study of this campaign is Hillary Clinton is doing this in kind of a sneaky, dishonest way. She's launching this campaign quietly behind the scenes, and Trump is just owning it. Like, he just runs out there and says, I'm a birther. I think this is crazy. I don't think the president was born here. This isn't a conspiracy theory. And it sort of captures what makes each of the candidates unique.
Leslie, was this a little bit of a gift to the Hillary Clinton campaign? Because they've had a tough week with her health and with all the other things, the deplorables, the different things over the last few days she's been dealing with. But how much does she like that this is now back in the news, and she can sit there and say, basically, he's a racist?
I think she likes it a lot, because when you look at numbers, and he's done well in numbers, and I think part of that is not the basket of deplorables, but rather the fact that she has just not been there. And this is even before the pneumonia. This is like, out of sight, out of mind. And he has improved, and he's improved not just in states like Florida and Ohio, but he has also improved across the board and in some swing states with certain groups like African Americans. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing here. It's almost any time he looks, and at one time just recently, he had as low as 0% in the polls among African American voters. And when he sees there's hope, and his campaign says, wait a minute, we're seeing when we have a nicer, more diplomatic presidential, if you will, Donald Trump talking, we do better. So listen, he doesn't believe the president wasn't born here, and everybody's saying we would need to hear it from him. He gets out there and he says it, but the motivation is, look, if you are black, vote for me. That's what he's doing here. And then, this reminded me of Shannon. I have an 8- and 9-year-old, and he started it, but I'm finishing it. This is what it really reminded me of. Very childish. I know you're laughing, with your kids. I understand. But seriously, because when you look at all the facts, fact check, PolitiCheck, et cetera, although there was one email within the Clinton campaign, the rest of all of the writings and Twitter and emails were not campaign workers, but rather supporters. Nothing came from her camp publicly. Nothing came from Hillary Clinton publicly.
The campaign manager had to fire one of the supporters.
Right,
and then the Mark Penn memo really raises questions because of the fact that Mark Penn is the one that said maybe we need to fundamentally question whether Obama is American. I mean, I think those are strong words coming from Mark Penn.
But I don't think that the allegation, an accusation by Donald Trump that Hillary in her campaign started this is accurate at all. I think that goes goes on him and the others who jumped on the birther campaign.
I think Politico even came out and said that there are the diehard Clinton supporters who were trying to push forward.
Supporter is not a campaign worker.
Well, but Mark Penn was part of the campaign.
Not one person fired. Hillary Clinton.
Mark Penn was not fired.
Hillary Clinton never said publicly, and every time we see anything with reference to that,
and she may not have had to say it publicly. If those who are closest to her are going around saying to people like the Washington bureau chief of McClatchy, hey, by the way, he was born in Kenya. I mean, it's the planning of ideas and the planning of the conversation.
By some of the advisors, absolutely.
So, is it time to close the door on this?
Oh, absolutely. I hope that we could just close the door on this. I think it's unfortunate. I think it should have, look, the door should have been closed 2011 when Obama came out and released his birth certificate. Fine, if they had legitimate concerns at the time, and Donald Trump did, and a certain number of Americans questioned whether he was an American citizen, White House came out, released the birth certificate. This should have been a done deal. And I think it's very important now for the Trump campaign. It's one of the reasons they needed to stop this nonsense, move on, back to the policy discussion. It's where Donald Trump is strong right now. It's where he's starting to continue to win the support of American voters, and why the momentum is shifting in his favor.
Yeah, the discipline has paid off for him. For sure. Now, there was some pushback today. He had this big event at the Trump Hotel that opened here in D.C. He had a number of military, very distinguished guests and heroes on stage with him today. He had said that he was going to talk about this birther issue. That was suggested. And so as the media stood by, they had to listen to person after person after person, military hero, all of them praising him. Not everyone in the media was happy about that. Here's what Jake Tapper said about that.
While we all got rickrolled and played in terms of rolling the endorsements from those American heroes who came out to talk about Donald Trump and why they support him, Medal of Honor recipients and the like, what's largely going to be covered are these two sentences, one of which is completely untrue.
There was quite the lead up, Charles, but listen, he's a showman. He scripted this definitely to his advantage.
The only thing missing from that event were the Trump steaks. I thought they would roll
I think they were served right after for lunch.
Of the kitchen and show all his other things. Look, he has a way of attracting the press and making them jump. They jumped and they came and they showed what he wanted them to show. But when he says, or when Mercedes says that this should have ended in 2011, well, the person who didn't end it in 2011 and who could have was Donald Trump. All he had to do was to say then what he says now. I don't think the information has changed. The politics have changed, and he wants to get this behind him. But he has spoken about it and expressed his doubts continuously since 2011. So he's hardly innocent about the continuation of this story. But I think they're smart. I'm sure this is Kellyanne Conway saying you've got to say the words, however much it hurts. You say it once, you add a period at the end. That's supposed to mean I'm done talking about this, and I think he will stop talking about it, and it will go away. Look, I think the reason he's done so well in the polls is because for about 3 weeks he's refrained from these distractions and eruptions. This was a recurrence of one. He ended it, and now he can continue his rehabilitation.
Yeah, and we'll see how the trending in the polls, if it continues, or if this is a blip. We'll find out. But up next, you love it, the Friday Lightning Round. Stick around.
We just had a classified briefing on the situation with the detainees being released at Guantanamo Bay, and I do not feel any more assured today that this is the right decision.
That report indicated that the so-called recidivism rate is below 6%, and that's an indication of how rigorous the process is when we are negotiating with other countries around the world to take these detainees and impose requirements that don't put the United States or the American people at risk.
We are back with our panel for the lightning round. Steve, I'll start with you on Gitmo. Catherine Herridge reporting today that there are confirmed reports of 2 of the more recent releasees being right back to terror.
Yeah, we have an exhaustive report that we posted today at weeklystandard.com based on months of reporting on these issues and others about what we know about Guantanamo, the president's efforts to close it. We know for a fact that the president lied directly about who he's released or transferred and what they were up to and how many of them have returned to the fight. We know that the Obama administration has rewritten threat assessments prepared by military and intelligence professionals to make the detainees that they're transferring and releasing look less threatening. We know that the administration has transferred or released detainees that its own task force said should not be freed because they continue to present a threat to the United States and its interests. We know that among the people who were transferred in August were members of this Karachi 6, which Catherine's report referenced earlier, including people who reported directly to the plotters of 9/11. And we know finally that a detainee named Slahi was mentioned in the 9/11 Commission report as somebody who recruited the hijackers in Germany. These are people who should never be let out of Guantanamo, and certainly if we're going to release them or transfer them or not continue to hold them, we should be clear with the American people and others about the risks involved.
And Leslie, shouldn't every average American out there, if these assessments are being rewritten and not truthful, I mean, is there any way to hold people accountable, and shouldn't they be rightly outraged over that?
Well, I don't disagree entirely, with you on this. Although you may be shocked by that, but I just want to look at numbers, okay? Even though math is not my favorite subject, when you look at 177 of those were either transferred, resettled, or released, and those are three different things, from Guantanamo under the Obama administration. 12 now, up from 6 in January, have entered the fight or rejoined terrorist efforts. 6 of those, by the way, were from the former administration, former President Bush, who released over 500 of these individuals. So here's my thing. Are we more concerned about closing Guantanamo? Because one of my problems is I think we have played into this with Guantanamo because we have just thrown people in. We have not charged them. They have not had their day in court, whether it's a criminal court or a military court. I have no problem closing it. I have no problem transferring individuals. I don't want people released, but I think that we've created perhaps some people into terrorists that may not have been when they were thrown in there originally. We know that there were originally deplorable conditions at Gitmo.
We got to make sure that we hit our other lightning round topics. So I'm going to switch to the TPP. There was a big trade meeting today with the White House. Ohio Governor John Kasich, who was one of the last men standing in the GOP nomination race, was there as part of this effort today. Here's a little bit of what he said about working across the aisle.
The idea that I'm a Republican and therefore I can't work with Democrats, or you're a Democrat and you can't work with Republicans, how does anybody think that the issues of debt, Social Security, Medicare, health care, any of these issues are going to be resolved when we spend all of our time fighting with one another? You see, I don't recognize this town much anymore because now it's become so much about politics.
Well, Mercedes, that is what this town's about.
Well, and we're in an election year.
Yes, we are, a presidential race. And by the way, I mean, our latest poll out of Ohio from Suffolk University shows Trump leading by 3 percentage points in a 4-way race. It's very tight. Kasich's support or his antagonism against things and positions that Trump has could make a difference.
Well, sure, but I think at the same time, Trump has been able to create momentum in Ohio without the Kasich support, which is surprising because Kasich is a very popular governor in Ohio. So I think for the most part, when we're talking about this TPP, what's fascinating is the fact that it's an issue where it actually does bring a number of Democrats and a number of Republicans together on this issue. This is where you actually have the strange bedfellows like a Mitch McConnell, like a President Obama working together on this issue. The problem is, as Speaker Ryan said, they don't have the votes in the House, and that this is not going to move forward, we don't think, in the lame duck session.
All right, you want to comment quickly on that before we get to winners and losers? Charles?
Yes. Kasich is right on the substance, but he's wrong on the reason that all this is a problem. It's not party politics. After all, the leading Republican candidate, is against it. Everybody's against it. Hillary was, Sanders was, Trump is. So it's not a partisan issue. It isn't a question of betraying your party. It's a question, I think, of going against the lessons of history and economics because of public opinion, and I don't think that's what leaders ought to do.
Okay, exceptionally brisk on your winners and losers, Charles. We'll start with you.
I'll be very brisk. Winner is Kellyanne Conway. She's the engineer of the turnaround Trump's numbers. She produced a kinder, gentler Trump, and thus far, people are believing it. The loser is Secretary of Defense Ash Carter. He opposed the Kerry deal with the Russians, which essentially capitulates on the issue of whether Assad stays in power, and has us collaborating with the Russians in military actions for the first time in about 70 years. Carter said, you can't trust them. He's right. Obama went with Kerry.
Even more brisk. Just give it to us. Winners and losers.
Ivanka Trump bringing up the issue of child care for working moms and for families, something Republicans don't like to talk about too often, an important issue. Loser, birther movement. I hope it's dead. We hope it doesn't resurrect again.
Leslie.
Okay, winners, the American worker. They got a raise for the first time since 2007, up 5.2%. Losers, and I say this as a daughter of a Jewish father, Donald Trump Jr.'s gas chamber remark. I know that he clarified what he meant, but I think when we hear that term gas chamber, the Holocaust definitely is what we
My winner is the USA Hockey, with the team heading into the World Cup of Hockey this weekend.
Nice.
On a roll, and with a coach who says he'll bench anybody who doesn't stand for the national anthem, which I like. My loser is Hillary Clinton, because have you watched the news this week?
Been a tough week. All right, thank you very much, panel. As you may know, Fashion Week is just wrapping up in New York City, so we hit the streets there to get some advice. Now, whether you want to take it from these guys, it's up to you. Right after the break.